As a kid, I remember a lot of things, like spending a Saturday morning watching cartoons, or going to my middle school, hanging out with friends, and having the movie nights with my mom. But for some reason, I feel like as a part of my childhood has been blank. I feel like I've been missing something of my life, or like memories were ripped out of my head. That's why I recently went back to visit my mother in my childhood home. Haven't seen her since the holidays, so I thought this would be a good time to give her a visit. I felt very nostalgic going back to my old town, since it was a very small town. Everyone knew each other, word spread quickly. Spent the first day there walking around, but I eventually made my way to the park. When I got there, I noticed the forest. Always, since I was a kid, gave me creepy aura, like something was watching me in there. But since I've gotten here, my mother said something to me that made me question, is this the reason I've come back here in the first place? She told me, hey kid, do you remember a long time ago you went back into the forest with your friend Kyle? I had to think about it for a second. Oh yeah, Kyle, man, I haven't heard that name in a long time. Does he still live around here? Honey, don't you remember? He died back in the 90s. What? How did this happen? Why didn't anyone tell me? Excuse me. She sprung up from her seat, and I saw her wiping tears from her face. What the hell? I remember him. He was my best friend. Why didn't she tell me? It made me question everything. How could I not remember that my best friend was killed? But then I started thinking about it more, and all the memories started flooding back into my head. And then I now realized what was the reason I had returned. This is a memory from my childhood. After contemplating for a while, I finally made up the decision to visit the woods again, to try to see if my memories clear up more. I made it I made it to the park. I then remembered that me and Kyle used to come here all the time. I sat down on the swings and tried to pay respects to my long dead friend. But as I sat down, I thought to myself, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. But when I sat down, a flash of light went into my eyes, and I felt myself falling over. I then woke up in the dreamlike stasis. Hey, Jake, why don't we go into the forest? Well, I'm not sure. The forest is kind of creepy, and your parents said we can't go into the forest, remember? Ah, do I hear a chicken? Kyle begins to start making chicken noises. Knowing how competitive I was back then, I sprung up from my seat. I am not a chicken. Come on, let's go. That's more like it, Jake. We began walking to the forest. I remember feeling the cold aura pass by me. And mind you, it was a hot summer day, so it was kind of weird for that to happen. Did you feel that, Kyle? Yeah, it was just the wind. Stop being such a crybaby. Hey, I got a good idea. You want to play hide and seek? Uh, I don't know. The forest is really big. We can get lost here. Like all those kids that have been getting lost here. Come on, Kyle, we shouldn't play here. Let's go. Uh-oh, the chicken is back. Come on, Jake. It'll be fun. Fine. I guess I'll go count and you hide, Kyle. Kyle began sprinting off into the opposite direction. 1, 2, 3. I heard Kyle run off laughing and giggling. After I finished counting, I yelled, "Ready or not, here I come." I began searching for him, but I noticed the sun's going down. We have to be home by the time it started. I got freaked out after I couldn't find him for around 5 minutes. And the sun kept going down, and I was never a huge fan of the dark. Hey Kyle, where are you? It's getting dark. I think we should go home. Come on, don't try and scare me now. You always do this to me when we do this. I then hear a loud thump. I walk over to the bush where I heard the thump. Okay, I know what you're trying to do. Come on, let's go home. I found you. When I looked behind the bush, what I saw was horrifying. I saw Kyle there, but something was over him. It was a tall, black figure. I couldn't really see its face. It had razor-sharp teeth and almost looked like a bear, although it wasn't. I stepped back and got a better look. It was very tall, and it looked at me. Blood was dripping down its teeth. I looked down, and I saw Kyle's mangled body. His throat was missing. I gasped very loudly, and the monster looked at me. He got up from where he was and lashed out. I began to run as fast as I could. I remember screaming and crying. I ran for what it almost seemed like hours. I eventually made it out of the woods, and as soon as I stepped out of the foot of the forest, I blacked out. I remember waking up to paramedics taking me away in a stretcher. I had a wound on my leg, but I didn't remember how I got it, nor did I bother to look at it. The paramedics looked at me and asked me, "Are you okay, son?" I didn't respond, so they immediately took me into the ambulance. But I looked over for a second, and I saw another stretcher. It had a cloth over his head. It looked like there was a body in there. Then I saw Kyle's parents run up to it and look under the cover, and they began to cry. His mother fell down to the floor, started crying hysterically that Kyle's dad had to take her away from the situation. And then I blacked out again. I suddenly regained my consciousness, and I was on the cold pavement floor. What the hell was that? Did I pass out or something? This can't be real. That's not how he died. I was just having a nightmare. Stupid nightmare. There's no such thing. No such thing. As I got up, my spine tingled. I felt something was breathing down my neck. I looked up and I saw that thing. It was looking at me with its cold, black eyes. I stumbled over, and it clawed me in the same spot where I got wounded when I was a child. I began bleeding, and I couldn't get up. Thought to myself, holy shit, this is how I'm gonna die. It's all over. With my hope drained, I felt something rub against the pavement in my pocket. I remembered I brought a pocket knife. So I reached for my pocket, and as the beast opened its mouth and went down towards me, I grabbed my knife and stabbed it in the eye. But the sound it made, it was the most inhumane and blood-curdling screech I've ever heard. With the little strength I had left, I got up and ran away for at least 2 miles without stopping. I eventually stopped, and from the blood, I passed out moments later. I woke up a few hours later in the hospital. My mom was sitting in the room. She called the doctor over, and he walked in the room. "Sir, do you remember what happened?" I just looked at him and thought, he would think I'm crazy if I told him what happened. So I just said, an animal attacked me when I was taking a walk in the forest. He looked at me and said, Well, then, you were not seriously injured, but that will leave a scar. I looked at it, and it had claw marks, like something had clawed me. It was patched up. After being given simple painkillers, I was sent home later that day. A few days later, I packed my things and went back to my apartment in New York. I am only sharing this story now since it seems like people have an interest in these types of things. But what prompted me to write this is the other day when I was walking home from my job, I could have sworn I heard the same scream the beast did when I stabbed it in the eye.